I still remember the sound of the ceiling fan that afternoon, the slow, uneven rhythm that filled the silences between us. I was fixing her old record player in the corner of her living room, pretending I didn't notice how quiet the whole place felt. The air smelled faintly of citrus polish and something warm, maybe the coffee she'd forgotten on the side table. Every few minutes she'd pass behind me, her steps measured, her presence steady enough to make me aware of every small movement I made. She wasn't the type of woman who tried to draw attention. She didn't need to. The way she leaned against the doorframe, half watching, half thinking, made me nervous in a way I couldn't explain. There was something about her calm that unsettled me. When I asked if she had a screwdriver, she didn't answer right away. She just studied me, then crossed the room and opened a drawer. "Here," she said, handing it over, her fingers brushing mine for less than a second. It shouldn't have meant anything. But it did. I kept my eyes on the record player, trying to sound casual. "You really kept this in good shape." She gave a small laugh. "I take care of what I can still fix." The words stayed in the air a little too long. I wanted to look up at her, but didn't. There was something in the way she said it, something tired, or maybe tender. When I finally turned, she was sitting on the sofa, legs crossed, arms resting loosely. She looked at me like she already knew what I was thinking, not judging, not curious, just seeing me. I told her it would take another hour. She nodded and said, "Take your time," then picked up a book she didn't seem interested in. The pages didn't turn. She just held it open while her eyes stayed somewhere near me. The longer I stayed, the stranger it felt. I wasn't supposed to notice the way her voice softened when she asked questions, or how her smile only appeared when I looked uncertain. But I did. When I tested the record player, the soft crackle of old vinyl filled the room. She looked up, surprised, maybe even pleased. "You fixed it," she said, standing up slowly. "Guess so." She walked closer, stopping right beside me. "You're good with broken things." I laughed under my breath, not sure what to say. "Sometimes." Then came the kind of pause that shouldn't mean anything, but did. The music faded into a soft hum. Her hand rested briefly on the back of the sofa as she leaned over to check the spinning record. The space between us felt too small. I told myself not to look at her, that it would ruin something delicate. But when I did, she was already looking at me, her expression unreadable. For a second, no one moved. The ceiling fan kept turning, the record kept spinning, and I had the oddest feeling that something had just started, quietly, without either of us saying so. She thanked me, her voice low, steady. I told her I'd drop by again to make sure the sound stayed clear. She nodded, then added, "I'll keep the coffee warm next time." I left the house with the smell of citrus still on my hands. That night, I kept replaying her voice in my head. Like I missed something, or maybe wanted something. The next time I saw her, it wasn't supposed to be personal. She called and said the sound had gone fuzzy again, that maybe I could take another look. I told myself it was just another fix, an excuse for me to stay busy on a quiet Sunday. But when I arrived, she wasn't in her usual calm. The house felt lived in differently that day. A jacket tossed carelessly over the chair, an unopened wine bottle on the counter, music still playing faintly in another room, the kind of small chaos that belongs to someone trying not to think too much. She greeted me with a thin smile, one that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Sorry," she said. "It's been a long week." I nodded, setting my tools down beside the record player. "Rough week?" "Divorce paperwork," she said, without drama. "Final this time." I didn't know what to say. I think she preferred it that way, she wasn't looking for comfort. Just someone who wouldn't make it worse by pretending to understand. I worked in silence. She moved around the room, occasionally passing behind me, pausing as if about to say something, then stopping. It felt heavier than before. Like the air had learned how to remember things. When I reached for a wire, she crouched beside me to hand it over. Our hands brushed again, but this time she didn't pull away. Neither did I. I told myself it was nothing, static between two people who happened to be near each other. But then she said softly, "You always seem so steady. I don't know how you do that at your age." I laughed awkwardly. "You haven't seen me enough to know that." "I've seen enough," she said. She was close enough for me to notice a strand of hair falling against her cheek. Without thinking, I almost reached to move it, then stopped, pretending to adjust the volume instead. My hand trembled slightly. I hoped she didn't see. She did. Her eyes lingered, and for a heartbeat, everything else in the room went quiet. "You can sit," she said, motioning toward the sofa. "You've been working all afternoon." I hesitated, then sat. She joined me, not close, but close enough that I could feel the warmth of her arm near mine. Neither of us spoke. The record player hummed softly, a faint static filling the silence like a shared secret. There was a question at the edge of her expression, something like, "What are we doing?" But she didn't ask it. And I didn't answer. When I finally said I should go, she touched my arm lightly. "Stay a little longer. The music sounds better when someone's here to listen." I should have stood up. Instead, I stayed still, feeling her hand rest just long enough to make it impossible to forget. That night, I didn't sleep much. The sound of the record kept looping in my head, soft, imperfect, and suddenly too close to something I couldn't name. It rained the third time I came over. The kind of rain that softened everything: sound, distance, intention. She'd called again, half apologetic, saying the music kept skipping even after I'd fixed it. I knew it wasn't about the music. Still, I went. She opened the door barefoot, her hair slightly damp, sweater sleeves rolled over her hands. There was something unguarded about her that evening, less practiced, less sure. "I didn't think you'd actually come," she said, stepping aside. "I was nearby," I lied. The living room was dim except for the yellow lamplight beside the sofa. The air smelled faintly of rain and the faint sweetness of her perfume. I set my bag down, pretending to check the player again, though I knew it was fine. "You look tired," I said quietly. She gave a dry laugh. "That obvious?" There was silence after that, the kind that wasn't uncomfortable, just full. She sank into the sofa and gestured for me to sit across from her. "Sometimes I just like the company," she said, then added quickly, "I mean, it's too quiet lately." I sat. We didn't talk much. The rain filled the spaces between sentences, making every pause feel intentional. At one point, she leaned forward, elbows on her knees, looking at me like she was about to say something real, but her phone rang. She stared at the screen for a moment, sighed, and silenced it. "Ex-husband," she murmured. "He still thinks we can fix what's already gone." I said nothing. But I saw the way her fingers trembled slightly before she hid them in her lap. Without thinking, I asked, "Does it bother you? Him calling?" She looked up. "It used to. Now, it just reminds me that someone can want you and still never really see you." The words hit harder than I expected. Maybe because I knew that feeling too well. I wanted to tell her that she wasn't invisible, that I noticed the way she brushed her thumb along her mug when she was nervous, how she looked at the window before speaking, how she listened like it mattered. But I didn't. I just watched her hand, resting inches from mine. The lightning outside flickered through the room. She turned toward me, eyes reflecting the faint flash, and whispered, "You're quiet tonight." "I'm trying not to say something stupid," I admitted. Like what? She asked, smiling faintly. Before I could answer, someone knocked at the door, sharp, unexpected. We both froze. Her expression shifted, almost guilty. It's probably my neighbor, she said too quickly. I stood, ready to step back, to remember that this wasn't my place. But then she reached out, catching my wrist lightly. Wait, she whispered. Her fingers were warm. Just stay for a minute. The knock came again, then silence. The rain covered everything else. Her hand stayed where it was, either of us moving, both pretending it didn't mean anything. But I could feel it, that invisible line between us, trembling. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if either of us wanted to step back. The storm had passed, but her living room still smelled like rain, that sharp, clean scent that lingers after something has broken open. I came by to check the wiring one last time, though we both knew I was checking something else entirely. She opened the door slower this time. No smile, no pretense. Just a tired warmth, like she'd stopped trying to hide whatever this was. Inside, the light was low. The record player sat quiet, untouched. She hadn't called me for the music. I thought you weren't coming anymore, she said. I thought so too. She nodded, almost like she'd been expecting that answer. Then she motioned for me to sit, but neither of us did. We just stood there, facing each other with too many unfinished sentences between us. I said softly, you could have fixed it yourself. I didn't want to, she admitted. I just wanted you here. It was the first time she'd said anything like that, and the room felt smaller because of it. I took a breath I couldn't hold. You shouldn't say that. Why? Her voice was calm, but her eyes weren't. Because it's true? I didn't answer. I couldn't. She stepped closer. Not enough to touch, but close enough for me to feel the space she was offering, and daring me to fill. I'm old enough to know what this looks like, she said. And you're young enough to think you can control it. I tried to laugh, but it came out wrong. You think I'm in control of anything right now? Her lips curved slightly, not amusement, something else. Then why are you still standing there? I looked down, at my hands, at the floor, anywhere but her. Because if I move, I'll say something I can't take back. She didn't speak. I could hear the faint ticking of the clock, the whisper of her breath. Then she said quietly, maybe it's already too late for that. Something inside me shifted, not forward, not backward, just deeper. I finally looked at her. There was no distance left to measure. I think about you, I said, before I could stop myself. More than I should. Her expression didn't change, but her hand gripped the back of the sofa like she needed to hold on to something real. Don't, she whispered. Please don't say that unless you mean it. I mean it, I said. That's the problem. For a moment, it felt like time folded, like everything we'd avoided was now waiting, right here. She stepped closer, eyes bright but unreadable. You have no idea what you're doing, she murmured. Neither do you. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was thick, charged, alive. She reached out, her fingers brushing the side of my arm, barely, like a thought she wasn't sure she should have. I didn't move. I couldn't. Then she asked, almost in a whisper, if I asked you to leave, would you? I looked at her, the question hanging there, breaking everything open. And neither of us answered. The next morning, everything looked ordinary, sunlight on her curtains, the faint hum of the ceiling fan, my jacket still draped over the arm of her sofa from last night. But the air carried something brittle, like a truth waiting to be dropped. She made coffee without a word. I watched her from across the table, both of us pretending that the silence between us wasn't full of everything we hadn't done. You didn't sleep, I said finally. She nodded. Neither did you. We shared a small, fragile smile, the kind that tries to make peace with what it shouldn't have felt. Then her phone buzzed. She froze when she saw the name. I didn't have to ask who it was. Her ex-husband again. But when she didn't answer, the phone buzzed a second time, this time followed by a message that flashed briefly across the screen before she could hide it. Did you tell him? She locked the screen fast, but not fast enough. I caught the words. Tell me what? I asked. Her lips parted, then closed. It's nothing. Old conversations that should have ended. Doesn't sound like nothing. She set the mug down too carefully, both hands trembling slightly. He knows about you. About me? I echoed. How? Her eyes lifted to mine, guilty but defiant. You fixed his car 2 months ago. I didn't realize until later, I saw your name on one of the invoices he left here. You worked at his garage before he moved out. The realization hit hard, all the small coincidences I'd ignored suddenly aligned. The record player, the phone calls, the hesitation in her voice when she first said my name. So that's why you kept calling me, I said, half to myself. No, she said quickly, stepping closer. That's not why. I didn't plan any of this. But you didn't stop it either. Her voice broke a little. Because for once, someone looked at me without remembering who I used to be to him. That silence again, only this time it cut. I wanted to believe her. I did. But everything now had a shadow. I picked up my jacket, trying to think, trying to breathe. You could have told me, I said. I was going to, she whispered. I just didn't want that to be what we were. Outside, a car door slammed, a sharp, jarring sound that made us both flinch. She moved to the window and pulled the curtain just enough to look. Her voice went low. He's here. I turned toward the door, my pulse quick. Then I should go. But she grabbed my wrist again, harder this time, desperate. No. Please. Not yet. For the first time, it wasn't tension I saw in her face, it was fear. Something had shifted completely, though I didn't know what would break first, the door outside, or whatever was left of the space between us. He stood on the porch, his knock still echoing in the hallway when she opened the door. Her ex. I knew his face before she said his name. I'd seen it once across the repair shop, back when I was still new, still naive. He looked older now, heavier with everything he hadn't fixed. Didn't expect company, he said, glancing past her shoulder, right at me. Her voice stayed steady. He's helping with something. Right, he muttered. You always did like fixing what's already broken. I should have left right then. But she didn't ask me to. And he didn't move. The air between them felt electric, not romantic, but charged with all the years that refused to die quietly. He looked at her one more time, then said, I came for the rest of my things. She nodded. They're in the guest room. He brushed past us, the smell of wet pavement following him inside. She stayed still until he disappeared down the hall, her hands clenched at her sides. When she finally spoke, her voice cracked. I didn't call him. I swear I didn't. I believe you, I said, and I meant it. But I also knew, this was the line. The one we'd been circling since the first time she looked at me too long. We stood in that narrow stretch of silence between thunder and rain, waiting for the next sound, a door closing, a word we couldn't unsay. She looked at me then, the kind of look that feels like a confession without needing one. This can't last, she said quietly. I nodded, but didn't step back. Then why does it still feel like it's just starting? She almost smiled, not because it was funny, but because it hurt to hear it. You'll leave one day. You're supposed to. That's how it works. I don't want to, I said, my voice barely there. Wanting isn't always the right thing. Her ex slammed a door down the hall. The sound startled both of us, but she didn't look away. For a moment, everything was just us, standing in the ruins of what could never quite become real. Then she stepped closer, her hands trembling. I needed you to see me. That's all I ever wanted. I do, I said. That's why I can't stay. Her eyes glistened, not with tears, but with understanding, the kind that comes too late to change anything. Outside, the rain started again, softer this time, almost forgiving. She reached up, touched my face briefly, then let her hand fall. Then go before I ask you not to. I hesitated only a second, then turned toward the door. Her ex didn't come out to see me leave. Maybe that was mercy. Maybe it was nothing. As I stepped into the rain, I heard the record start playing again inside, a slow, crackling melody that sounded almost like goodbye. And for the first time, I let it be one. It's been almost a year since that night. I still remember the sound of rain against her windows, the soft static of the record turning after I left, that quiet, unfinished song we never got to hear the end of. I haven't seen her since. Not really. Once, I thought I saw her across the street near the bookstore, but when I blinked, she was gone. Or maybe she just didn't want to be seen anymore. The garage feels different now. Some days, I still catch myself looking toward the door when it opens, expecting her to walk in and ask if I could take another look at something. Instead, it's just customers and noise, things that don't stay, things I can fix. For a while, I thought I could just move on. But moving on isn't always forgetting, sometimes it's learning how to live with the echo of something that mattered. She taught me that people aren't puzzles you fix, they're songs you listen to, even when they skip. I used to think what happened between us was a mistake, two lonely people stepping into the same silence for a little too long. But the longer I sit with it, the more I think it was something else. Something that showed us who we were, even if only for a moment. For her, I think it was about being seen again, not as someone's ex, not as someone's story, but as herself. For me, it was about learning that being needed isn't the same as being loved, and that sometimes the most honest thing you can do is walk away before the truth turns into regret. Every time I hear a record crackle to life, I remember how she'd tilt her head, how her fingers would hover just above the vinyl like she was waiting for permission to touch something fragile. That memory used to ache. Now it just exists. Quietly. Like the ending of a song you didn't realize you already knew by heart. I kept the screwdriver she lent me. The one she handed over the first day, with that line about taking care of what you can still fix. It's rusted now, but I keep it anyway, a reminder that some things aren't meant to be repaired. Some things are meant to be remembered. If I could tell her one last thing, it would be simple: you were never broken. You were just tired of being alone. And maybe that's what we both were, tired of the spaces between what we said and what we meant. Still, I don't regret a single word, or silence, or moment of hesitation. Because even though it ended, it was real. And that's more than most people get. That record player still works perfectly. I just don't play it anymore. The last song it held feels enough to last a lifetime.